How you doing? In this God shot, I want to ask you, how forgiving and merciful are you? Pope Francis has been saying, since he came into being Pope, he's been saying the mercy of God is the biggest aspect to reality. And we live in this ocean of mercy, and we're supposed to extend that mercy to each other. How good are you at doing it? Back in the day, I was a youth minister in Queens, the town that I live in. And there was a kid that I got ready for confirmation. That was my job as the youth minister, to get the older kids ready for confirmation. His name was Murph. And he was a kid in my confirmation class, but not just that. He had a kind of mixed up life in a lot of ways, and I always took upon myself like wanting to mentor him in the right way. And he stayed with us after confirmation, came on the retreats, was part of the youth group, the youth ministry. He did everything. He was always there. And I always felt kind of responsible for him. And what happened is that one day he took his life. He hung himself. 2 years to the day that his older brother had done that. And it wiped me out. I mean, I've known teenagers that I tried to help that have had taken their lives, but Murph hit me really hard because, like I said, I felt the Lord wanted me to be in his life, and I clearly felt I had failed. And I was so upset and so wiped out about it that I wasn't going to go to his funeral. You know, the wake, I was like, I can't deal with this. I wasn't going to go, but then I realized there were going to be so many teenagers from our youth group, from our community that were going to be there, and I shouldn't be thinking to myself, I should be there for them. So I went. And when I got to the funeral home, outside was a bunch of Murph's friends. Murph was well connected to the streets, and these guys were not the kind of guys that came regularly to the church, unless there was a rock concert. But these guys were all outside, and I knew them all. They knew me, and I was talking with them, and I was picking up how angry they were. They were in a state of shock. They were really angry, and sometimes what happens when we're angry, we look for someone to blame. We look for someone to dump all of that negativity onto, and for them, it was the girlfriend. I was listening to them as they said, she did this. She cheated on him. She got him into the drugs. To her, he was never good enough. And she did this, and she dares to show up with a killer. Now, I know these guys. I know what they pack. I know what they're about. And I also know, I hope to God she doesn't show. Continuing to talk with these guys, and next thing you know, coming out the parking lot is this girlfriend. And she's walking right towards us. And I'm like, oh God, what are we going to do here? There's nobody else around but me. If someone's going to have to stop something violent happening, it's going to be me. And I'm trying to distract them. I'm being a complete idiot. I'm like, hey guys, check out the moon tonight. Hey, you look at those stars. Anything to get their mind off of her. Some of them walked away. I think they knew if they stayed there, they were going to do what they said, and they didn't want to. And the rest of them are like at their hands in their, in their pants and in their pockets, down their socks, and I know what they got on them, and I'm like, what am I going to do here? And the next thing you know, I hear the front door of the funeral home slam shut, and I look over, and it's Murph's mom, and I'm thinking, they're not going to get to kill her. She's going to do it. She come out to smoke a cigarette. She saw this girl walking towards us, and she put the cigarette out, and she walked down the steps, past us, over to this girl, and she took her arms and put them around her and held her tight and walked with her almost defiantly past all of us. Went up the steps, back into the funeral home, and I followed her. I followed them as they walked down the aisle and up to the casket. And I watched Murph's mom and this girl kneel down together before Murph's coffin. She held her tight. She let her cry on her shoulder. They prayed the rosary beads together. And I'm watching the whole thing, and I'm like, how is this happening? How? I know enough to know that when someone takes their life, you can't blame another person. But I also knew that Mrs. Murph knew how much this girl had hurt her son. And yet here she is. She is showing that she has absolutely no bitterness, no hatred, nothing. Complete mercy and forgiveness. At the end of the night at the funeral home, I went up to Mrs. Murph. And I said to her, Mrs. Murph, you know, all my life, I've heard so many times in church, anything related to God, that God forgives and God has mercy. And I heard it, and I knew it up here. Tonight, I learned it in here because I saw God forgive through you. She's a very, very simple woman, very down-to-earth woman. She just looks at me and says, you know, wouldn't it be something if we could just be as good to each other as God is with us? And that's the way it is. We have this mercy given to us. There's a great story that Jesus told in the Bible about this master who had this servant that owed him money, and the servant pleads, and the master forgives him, and then that servant turns around and sees someone else who owes him money and totally breaks the guy's chops, even has him in prison until he gets paid. And then the word went back to that master, and the master's like, are you crazy? I forgive you, and you turn around and do that to him? You know, and that guy, of course, was in major trouble. And that's the way it is. Jesus was trying to say, God is going to have infinite mercy with you. How dare you not give each other that kind of mercy? And remember, forgiveness is not saying, hey, no problem. No, it was a problem. It wasn't right. Didn't deserve it. What you're saying is, I'm going to let God take care of that with you. I'm going to let that be between you and God. It's a gift you give yourself. It's refusing to get caught up in the bitterness and the anger and the resentment. They don't hurt them. Okay? Holding a grudge is like peeing in the ocean. Nobody feels it but you. Yeah, that was brilliant. Okay. So it's a gift you give yourself when you forgive. Okay? Now, reconciliation, that takes two people. For the relationship to be reconciled, they have to want to, straighten it out with you. Okay? But forgiveness doesn't require any other person. That's something you give yourself. Now, if you struggle with this, I invite you, like I've had to do all my life. And I talk a little bit more about this in the, letting go and revenge God shot. But it is something I know a lot about. I've had to work on it, and I've definitely seen what I'm saying to be true. That it's something that doesn't hurt them. It hurts yourself, and God doesn't want us to do that. And we are given so much mercy. I believe that when you die, I think one of the greatest hellish moments would be to realize how harsh you were in situations where out of fear and anger, you acted in ways that you didn't need to. You were never in as much danger as you thought. And that those kinds of actions where you just were not more merciful are, especially when you're encountering the infinite mercy of God, is going to be very painful. So work on that, and I'll pray for you to be able to do that more, and send me your success stories, okay? It would be pretty inspiring to me, being it's something that I constantly work on myself. And love you. God bless you, and keep shining. Okay, thanks for listening.